Welcome to Fright Night. For real.
Trust me, you filthy, dirty hippie.
Welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are ready to rock on a special Saturday night. And I'm not here alone because when you're talking about a movie like this, you need to have some friends that are going to talk about it with you. So we've got Eric, of course, who is always a blast to have on. And we've got coming back to the channel, we got Barb. What is up, guys?
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I'm excited.
Yeah. Eric, I saw the look you gave me on that intro. You know what's going on. You know what's going on.
Like I said, the chat's all in good fun.
It is. It's all in good fun. And for some of you guys that are here, we'll get to the chat in a second, but you guys obviously know we've had a lot of fun talking about legacy franchises, and Halloween is a favorite of ours. And we did do our great debate of Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and tonight is kind of a little bit of a different pivot to get a little bit deeper and have discussion. And so we're gonna have a lot of fun. A blanket hello to all of you guys in the chat. We're glad that you guys came here, and for you guys that came over from Steven's live stream, we appreciate that as well. Shout out to our brother Steven. But a big hello. We got Danielle in the house. We got Melissa in the house. RJ, who's ready to throw bombs. There you go. Wow. And we know Val. It's so funny. I had so many comments and messages of people like, what? You're opening up the can of worms again? Yes, we are. Scott, what's up? Good to see you. We got the wig master in the house. Julie, what's going on? Hope you're doing well. And let's see who else. We got MAGA in the house. Kelly is here. Kelly is ready to go ahead of time. Love it. Love it. Thank you for being here, Kelly. Paula in the house as well. And also thank you to Kelly too. We had a really fun discussion earlier on the Patreon in preparation for this, because a lot of people have some interesting thoughts on the film, and just more so than just saying, hey, I love it, or hey, I hate it, and really getting into some cool aspects. So thank you for that, Kelly. I appreciate you being a part of that. And let's see who else we got. We got Rachel. Hey, Rachel.
Hey, Rachel.
Oh, hope you're doing well. Who else? I saw a lot of people back and forth. Thank you guys for being here. If I missed anyone, I apologize. We also have and Danielle going Team Hobo Myers. All right. Gory's in the house. What's up? And everyone else, I'm just going to say a blanket hello. We're starting this thing off quick because what I want to do is I want to turn it over to Barb first, who's really been waiting to do this discussion. And so a big shout out to her. as well as her channel, which is doing really well. So make sure
Yes.
that you guys go and subscribe. We got the link in the description. We'll have the link in the chat tonight. But Barb, what are your overall thoughts about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2?
So maybe it would surprise some people to know I did see his Halloween 1 at the theater, but it was really upsetting to me, so I didn't go back to watch that, or even I didn't even want to watch the second one.
Yeah.
Because Rob Zombie, and I've said this before, he has a very visceral way of kind of reaching out to the audience, and he wants you to feel something. He doesn't just want to put out a just regular old slasher. Not that I'm not dissing on our slashers, because that's my favorite subgenre as well as yours. So, but the thing is, it took me a very long time to go back into it, and I think it was in 2023, I decided I wanted to go back and just watch all of them, just all of the Halloween movies. And I'm just looking at Mental Institute, Mike Gurley. I'm just reading what he says. So I wanted to go back and include all of them. I wanted to just get over myself and just watch it all. And the second one, I was really surprised how much I don't want to say, do you say enjoy it? I mean, I enjoyed it for being a movie that was about trauma and such an emotional, I mean, so when it starts, of course, if you've all been here, you've all seen it. When it starts, you see this brutal scene in the hospital.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, oh, it's going to start basically like Carpenter's Halloween 2. And he's like, pump the brakes. This is not real. This is not the movie we're going to give you. We're going to go a different direction. So I'm like, oh, he's doing something different. He's going to go psychological with this. So I really think that people went into it kind of expecting it to be more like Carpenter's Halloween 2. And I think people were upset by that, because when they realized that it was just a dream, they were mad immediately within that first 10, 15 minutes. Like, what do you mean this is just a dream? Because people don't like that. Or movies that end with, oh, sorry, it was all a dream. I'm looking at Nightmare on Elm Street. People get mad about that. And I understand that anger there, because it was such a brutal scene. So they're kind of wanting to see what kind of carnage he can come up with, and then to get the rug pulled from under you. So I understand. But what we got in place of that was something more in depth, and I'm grateful for it. And I think had I seen it maybe years ago, maybe I wouldn't love it as much as I do. But to be honest, in truth, I started watching it last night, and today I had to keep taking breaks because it is so emotional. And I knew that the part when the bracket, when Annie, when her demise came, I knew that this was going to bother me, and it makes me cry every single time. It's his acting, and I strongly encourage that if you have only seen the theatrical version of this, you have to go back and watch the unrated. If I have done nothing else tonight, it's to encourage you to at least watch that version, because I think you're missing out if you haven't. There's so much more, and Eric will agree with this. There's so much more to that scene with Annie, and watching it again, it just broke my heart all over again, because the theatrical version doesn't give you time to grieve with Brad Dourif in that character. It doesn't give you time to grieve before it's already switching to something else. Whereas the unrated, you're seeing so much more to it. You're seeing like a silence.
Yeah.
At one point, remember, Eric, you're seeing kind of like no sound, because
there are a lot of times, and this is something Rob's really good with, is he'll take all the audio out. So it's all raw. It's like reading a book. You're imagining how high pitched is Sheriff Brackett screaming? Is it guttural? Stuff like that. You can use your mind, and that's a great trick that he always does. And we'll get into it more. But Rob always likes, in all of his films, he did it in Devil's Reject. He did it in 31. He likes to use home movie type footage. You know what I mean?
Right.
The old projector type of stuff, and using that in that particular scene, it hits really hard.
Well, I agree. I mean, and that's easily, one of the most emotional scenes in the film, maybe in the franchise. And I think it was handled well. And again, the acting was phenomenal. And I've said that a bunch of times. But let's back up for a second, because so I'll throw this to you, Eric. So
Sure.
the opening of, first of all, and just to say too, and I know a lot of people have heard me speak about it. That's why I want to have you guys talk a little bit about it too. But I, I've seen both of, well, I've seen, let me just think about that. From 6 on out, I've seen every Halloween film in the theater, and I saw Rob Zombie's films with my brother, which was really cool too. So we had big conversations about it as well. But let me just say real quick, and then Eric, I want your thoughts on it. I almost, not that I thought it was a dream, but I was thinking to myself, wow, this doesn't seem right, that it's kind of like a rehash of Halloween 2 from 81. So when it was shown that it was just a dream, me personally, and I'm a huge fan of 81. I mean, I've got the shirt on right now for 81. And, I wasn't upset that it was a dream personally, because I think that the first Rob Zombie film, set up a new path anyways, because, it was half, his thing and half of a rehash of 78. What about you, Eric? When you found out that it was a dream, what was your thoughts to that, as far as, the whole hospital sequence being a dream, and then, kind of going off into Rob's own version of Halloween 2?
Oh, I personally love that it was a dream, because he already had so much backlash from horror fans, the horror communities, because remaking Halloween you shouldn't do. And you know me, I always say remake everything, because the original still exists no matter how you feel. The original, in my opinion, is never tarnished. We've all look at the sequels this original has already had, so it's not like it could get any worse, in my opinion. But he already had all that weight on his shoulders with his first remake. And then when the second one came out, he knew the pressure was even heavier on his shoulders. And I loved how he gave the fans this little nod to the original timeline, I guess you would say. We have Laurie in the hospital, and he's upped it up. He's ramped it up. And that's what I was on this roller coaster the whole time. He's obviously a very visceral guy. So he's up the gore big time with just the surgery aspect of it. So you're already uncomfortable, and you're on the edge of your seat just with like the close-ups of stitches and removing fingernails and stuff like that. And it's just this great ride watching Laurie, and then the scenes where she's just walking down the hallway and she looks at Annie. It's just 3 seconds, but the point is right there. The trauma that it's not just her. You know what I mean? There were more than just Laurie as victims to this assault. And I've always loved Tyler, and he is just super vicious in this. And they're in the movie 30 seconds to maybe 2 minutes, Caroline Williams and Octavia Spencer. I like them. They have one scene together, like literally one scene together, where they're just bullshitting. Okay, I'm going to leave. Okay, I'm going to go deal with the patients. But, Octavia Spencer, I love her. She's so bubbly and stuff like that. You can tell that like she's probably worked 15 hours. She hasn't had lunch yet, but she cares for these students, or excuse me, these patients, because the way she handles Laurie. And when Octavia gets it, I'm just like, and she gets it bad, not just with the stabbing, but with that slice on the face. You're just like, this is not going to end well. And then
that's right.
When Michael shows up, it's boom, boom, boom. Laurie is slowly going from point A to point B to get out to the little security office. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what else can happen? She's hiding under the table. The security guard, takes care of her. He's taken out. And then I love that jolt, that it's a dream. And here's the thing. It doesn't mean that didn't happen. Well, no, it does, because his body's been missing. Excuse me. But still, it's just one of those, okay, now we have some.
You question it.
Yeah, you question it, because there's a lot of that question, where is he type of thing.
Right.
And it just helps with a lot of these dreamlike states that we have moving forward with this film, because there's a lot of hit and miss, in my opinion, hallucinations that happen.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And some are great. Some, I think, Rob went a little too Rob. You know what I mean? And it happens.
Yeah.
But I think it just adds with what we've already seen, that we can't always trust our eyes now. And I think that was something, I don't know if that's something he intentionally tried to do, but that's what I pick up on. So and it just keeps me more invested and paying attention to the screen more with the little details. Like,
right.
If this is the first time watch, you don't realize the hospital scene's a dream. But if you think about it, Nights in White Satin, that's not that long of a song. And she's, it's like a 15-minute sequence. The song's playing up until, from the very beginning up until the security guard's taken out. So put 2 and 2 together, that's not going to happen. So you can tell he's sprinkling little bits and pieces in on a second watch that he intended for it to be a dream, if that makes sense. And I just think that was a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, and we're also going to get to comments in the chat too. And again, guys, we won't be able to get to everyone's comment. If you do send in a super chat, we're going to make sure that we get to your question and our comment, and we do have one that we're going to get to in a second. But I think that what some people, and myself included, and I've spoken about this, I think that it's those moments where it seems like it goes into this direction where it's almost like undoing some of the good. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have characters that are really good in the film, and then you have some characters that is just like, okay, why are we going to that extreme? And again, I think it's basically his aesthetic that he uses, which is a really cool aesthetic in certain projects. Like, and Eric, you know this, I'm a huge fan of Devil's Rejects. I think that is a great film, and it works. Everything in it, to me anyways, it works. Even if you don't connect it to House of a Thousand Corpses, you know what I'm saying? Right. But when you watch Halloween from 2007 and then you watch H2, there just seems to be like, even though Halloween had some differences that it did from the franchise, which I think in general worked, a couple of things here and there, but I've talked about that. But I think in Halloween 2, it really turns the corner, and I think that it feels disconnected in some ways. And of course, I know that his big thing, with the contract and not wanting to really, do it. And, he was supposed to do 3 of them, and it was a horrible experience for him. And I've done videos on that. And I really feel bad for Rob Zombie, because through these 2 films, he said he lost his love for the franchise. That's horrible. I feel bad about that. I truly do, because he was a huge fan of the franchise in that original film. But that being said, I think that sometimes, the disconnect that's made is what can really sway a person's opinion on it one way or the other. Fortunately, like you guys, myself, a lot of you guys that are here in the chat, a movie isn't built on just one thing. It's multiple things. And, and we're going to talk more about some of those things. Barb, let's go to you. Let's talk about, well, let's just start off with a couple things. I know there's a lot to talk about. We can't talk about everything, but let's start off with Laurie, obviously, and what Scout was able to do with this character and the choices that were made, in the script for this character. What did you think of Laurie in this film, and any particular aspect of it that you wanted to discuss?
Well, so this was interesting because when I had seen her in the first one versus the second one, I thought, well, she was so, it's crazy how after so many rewatchings, your mind starts to shift on certain things, because initially I liked her better in the first one. And the second one, I was like, oh, she's so annoying now. But I don't know if it's just because I've gone through trauma of losing, not in the aspect of that, of how this movie is, but I've gone through the trauma of losing someone close to me, and it changes you in how you perceive a movie then. Yeah. How you receive it versus, say, years ago when you first watched it or whatever. So I prefer her in this one now because it just feels so real and so raw. And I just, even a couple of months ago when I did something on my own channel, I was trying to defend it there, in a roundabout way, and talking about, I still brought it up though, like, oh, look what she did to the bedroom. Here she is living with the brackets, and her bedroom and her bathroom, she's completely trashed it. She's taken like tagged the walls and everything. She's got Manson up on her.
Yeah, it feels so different from 07. Now, that's not to say that people can't change. We all do. But it just feels like it's a totally different universe with her.
Well, and it's
And
because trauma is so
Mhm.
gripping, and how people
true.
in the way it shows you the difference between her healing and
Hmm.
Annie healing are like polar opposites. Annie
Right.
is pretty much just staying inside now. She's not angry. She's just kind
Hmm.
of taking one day at a time. Whereas, with Laurie, she's mad at the world. Like but that is the truth. That's how some people handle grief and
Hmm.
anxiety, is sometimes it comes out as anger. And
Hmm.
I think that portrayal is just so accurate, showing that
Mm,
there's no perfect victim.
right.
Mhm.
So I think that's what made me actually on this viewing. I don't know if you felt the same, Eric, but
Mhm.
watching this again and just seeing her and giving her more sympathy, giving her a little bit more grace, even though, because if you look at the theatrical versus the unrated, again, another reason you should watch the unrated. Theatrical, as she's sitting there with Annie at the breakfast table, she's saying, Annie is saying, take it one day at a time. And it shows Laurie kind of saying, "Yep, just one day at a time." But in the
Hmm.
unrated, she's saying, right after that, she says, "I am so sick of hearing one day at a time." So it
Yeah.
almost looks in the theatrical like, oh, she's getting a little better. But no, no. In the unrated, it shows more emotion, more anger coming from her, which I don't know. Eric and I both feel the same about the unrated. It's
Mhm.
Hmm.
very, it dives into it more.
Yeah.
Rob Zombie obviously prefers it. It's the director's cut. He's very proud of this, even though with everything surrounding uh, that his part of it, and like you said, it's so sad knowing what he had to deal with. But
Yes.
what he gave us in two, I just think it's underrated, and that's why I really hope that people will kind of hear this today and think about watching even just that other one, because there's so much more to her character. There's depth, like peeling an onion. It's
Yeah.
Mhm.
so
Well,
curious
there's
what
there's no doubt there's no doubt in my mind that her performance was much better in Halloween 2. I mean,
Mhm.
and the character was written in a more interesting way. Now, part of that is because the first film, I think I enjoy the first film. I mean, it has its issues, but the issue with the first film is he's doing two films in one. He's
Yes.
doing his own film where he's showing young Michael, and there's great stuff in that. I think Loomis is great. It's great to see that interaction in Smith's Grove. I also think Sherry Moon was
She was
severely
fantastic
underrated.
in the first movie.
Severely underrated. And I've always, and you know this, Eric, I've always said she was fantastic,
Mhm.
especially in those scenes at Smith's Grove. Everything she did, I think, was actually great because even though the home was all messed up, and always a shout out to William Forsythe, who was, Ronnie was the greatest jackass in horror history. But even with all of that, and it started to go to the edge of the cliff a little too far, but
Mhm.
Rob puts you right in the middle of it. But even with that, Sherry as Michael's mother, I think always was great. No matter, even in the scenes where they showed, she was a dancer or whatever, it was still done in a way that felt realistic, like he likes to portray, but also
Here's the thing.
gritty,
She
you
may be,
know?
an exotic dancer, but she's doing it to provide for her family.
Right. And it was
No
shown.
one ever remembers there are women that do that to pay for college. There's single
right.
Absolutely.
mothers that do it to just pay for,
Abs-
taking care of a baby. They're not doing it for the sexual part of it. They're doing it
yeah,
to provide and for a living. And that's what
absolutely.
Deborah was doing in the first film.
Absolutely. But
100%.
here's the thing though. Here's the thing. The way they showed that was okay, fine. They do the call back to it in the second film, which, yeah, I mean, you could say, okay, it's a kill scene for Michael, which was great. It was intense and everything. But it was like, okay, I mean, we went a little too far in that scene, in my opinion. In my opinion, and that's part of the issue that I think, and I've always talked about that I think that it's like he's doing some great stuff, but then he does something to kind of like pull you back and say, okay, well, if a character from the film, one of the main characters was in that scene, you know what I'm saying? Like if someone went there and they wanted to see where Deborah Myers used to work or
Hmm.
whatever, and then they get killed, that would be like, okay, I get why they went to the strip club and they have, the guy putting on the Frankenstein mask. We know what he did, but they didn't do that. And it's like, see, that's where he takes those two steps back for me. But that being said, there's no doubt that Scout was awesome to me in this film, even though I didn't really like some of those choices. And Rob Zombie said that too. He said, I've made this character very unlikable, maybe too unlikable, and that's on me. Like, he literally said that. So it's like he has that awareness, and I think sometimes, for whatever reason, I mean, we may never know, he'll choose to go to that edge. But I just think that sometimes in this film that it just went too far. But I do agree with you. In the first film, not that Scout was bad, but I just don't think the character was great in the first film. And that's because she only has half of a film to be a character.
And
Like,
she was so
you know,
young too. I didn't
Yeah.
realize she was only literally 17 when I didn't know that. You
right.
know, credit to, and I think everyone in the chat will agree with me on this. Credit to you, Knight. And this is all full circle this night. I'm kind of like, this is so cool because I met you through your video that was about Rob Zombie. I was literally scrolling YouTube. My husband was sitting next to me and I was like, oh, this looks good. And so I clicked on it. I don't know, it was like 17 minutes, something like that. And I'm like, oh, I got to subscribe to this guy. He's got some good content. But it was just full circle tonight. This is just so crazy. Anyone that's in the chat that I'm sure you agree, Knight digs hard on stuff. Like, you really do your homework and give us so much cool information. I've told you this before, like finding out stuff about directors or movies that we've seen maybe 20 years ago, and you go hard. Like, you go search all the corners of the internet to find some really cool stuff for us. So thank you for that.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I just think that, I think a lot of us, we're horror fans, and well, obviously the people that enjoy stuff like that, like yourself, we want to know these things, or it's interesting to us. And I always feel like, especially for the legacy franchises, that's part of my curiosity is, well, what else? Why did this happen? What was going on behind the scenes? And there is tons of stuff that is out there and that's interesting about how these films were made and the trials that people went through to make them. And it gives you a different picture. I mean, like I said, I'm the type of person that I can appreciate people doing what they do as far as making films and so forth. And I can appreciate that even if I have issues with the film, or even if I absolutely love the film, that process to me is so interesting because there's so many elements, and there's so many times when things could go left or right, decisions that are constantly being made by the director, by the writer, by the actors, cameramen, so anyways, I appreciate that. But I just find all of that stuff so interesting. I'm just like, that's part of what fuels me when I'm talking about a movie. I want to know a little bit more than just what I saw on the screen. So I'm glad you enjoy it.
I do.
Cool
I
stuff.
do.
Yeah. Let me just jump to the chat real quick too. I know we've got some really interesting comments. We can't get to everyone, but we can get to Rachel, who's been very patient. Thank you so much for sending that. Saying, we stan Hobo Myers. And Rachel, thank you so much for that super chat. We appreciate you. And basically, this is what she's talking about. There he is right there. The man of the hour.
Love him.
You wouldn't know it, but no, I'm just joking. That's Michael. But let's get to that, because Eric, when I played the intro, I was waiting for Eric, his reaction. Eric, we've talked about this 1,000 times, so let's just bring it up and kind of have some fun with the chat. Me personally, I think Tyler is great in these films. He was absolutely fantastic, but I do feel as though, having seen all the movies more times than I could possibly imagine, I feel as though, again, it's kind of like, if I was to describe it as like going to the edge of a cliff, it just feels like we went way too far into a physicality that kind of takes away the mystique of Michael. Because the way I look at it, if we talk about the big three, or even we talk about the big four, Michael, Jason, Freddy, Ghostface, to me, that's the Mount Rushmore. You guys know that. That's how I feel. But I feel like Michael even more than Freddy, and we were just talking about this the other night on Battle World, I think Michael has always had this interesting mystique because he's not supernatural, right? But it's like, why does he do what he does? You know, why did he kill his sister when he did? Why was he not talking for so many years? And why did he all of a sudden decide to boom, let's go? You know, let's start it all over again. And I feel like, you know, doing these things, whether it's you know, the running, the grunting, the talking, not having the mask on, I feel like it takes away a little bit of that mystique, because the way I look at it when I watch these two films and so forth, it's like, yeah, he should be killing everyone. He's a literal giant.
Mm-hmm.
Who can't he kill? It's reminding me of this guy from New Jersey. It's like, what are we doing here? Michael is a man who, if I saw him on a street corner, I'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever. You know, it wouldn't phase me. But that to me is what was always scary about him, is that he was like a normal guy that were doing these things, as Carpenter and Deborah Hill made it out to be, that were almost like supernatural or almost above human, but not there. You know what I mean? And that always intrigued me. But and maybe it was because, you know, we have a new audience, modern audience, and we got to have the intensity. But here's the other part to that argument. I know I'm arguing with myself, but if we look at the Halloween trilogy, James Drew Courtney was able to have intensity, physicality, brutality, but he still seemed like the boogeyman, or at least the prototype of what the boogeyman is. What do you think about Michael in this movie, Eric, or in both of these movies, you know, whether it's his physicality, his brutality, the look, no mask, all that type of stuff?
I've always said it, and like, I'm going to say this out here. I know how passionate Halloween fans are. So obviously my opinion is only mine. It's not Barb's. It's not Knight's.
Right.
So I'm just getting that out there. I've also always said on this channel hundreds of times, Halloween is not one of my favorites when it comes to horror films. I enjoy it. I appreciate what it's done for the genre, but it's not on a pedestal to me. You know what I mean? There are things I prefer a lot more. So I've never really grown attached to the Michael character. You know, I understand why people love the mystery. I'm more of an explanation guy. And that's why I prefer the asylum scenes from Rob's first film. You know, Michael had signs of a serial killer abusing animals, and then it just ramped up from there. You know, bad home life, bullied because his mom's a stripper, you know, all that stuff sprinkled in. To me, the reason, and it's funny because, you know, I also love Jason and Freddy and their mystical beings and stuff like that, you know, undead killers. I like the realism. That's what scares me. The realism. Like, I get it. He's a 7 foot tall guy that could, you know, break your hand with a handshake. You know what I mean?
Lift a car like Lou Ferrigno.
That's right. But that's what scares me. You know, I'm more afraid of the realism stuff. Home invasion movies. That shit terrifies me. And this Michael, because he's pretty much as we can be based in reality. And that's what scares me. This is a guy that eventually just snapped. And once he snapped, he never stopped. And I do love mine and Knight's little, you know, busting of the chops when it comes to Hobo Myers. You either love the look or you don't. I like it because the realism. Yeah. The dude's been in the field for 2 years.
Walking around.
He's not like James Drew Courtney in the sewers shaving for 3 years. You know what I mean?
Wait a minute. He didn't shave in the sewers. He had
he doesn't have scruff. How long was it between kills and he had scruff? He's still 4 years. He's still taking care of his face. Yeah. Okay, a dude's walking around in the field. He's gonna have a hobo beard. You know, I get lazy sometimes and have a hobo beard. Again, it's the realism, and again, eventually, this movie becomes a revenge film. Revenge films scare the shit out of me. Yep. You know, they do, because it happens. You know, right? This is a realistic Halloween film with me. You know, we already talked about the trauma, which I agree 100% with Barb. And the Laurie stuff, and we'll get to Annie. But this is now a guy going home, and he sees what's been done to his mother's image. We're not talking about the ghost stuff right now, okay? this is, this is, and it really happens. People are like, this is the place where the mother of Michael Myers lived. They're trying to bank on her legacy. You know what I mean? Hey, you want to see where the mother of the world's most famous serial killer is? Hey, come on in. And then while you're there, have a drink. You know what I mean? That's how it is. And I hate to tell you guys, that's how the world is. It really is. There are some scumbags like that who want to bank on another person's tragedy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And if I put myself in that picture, you know what I mean? I love my mom to death. If someone's banking on her legacy in a negative way like that, I want to do something about it. Now, am I going to face stomp and smash, heads and stuff? No, but I can understand why. And with this being a realistic Michael, I'm full in with this. You know what I mean? He does his business, and then he goes to continue his work. He's got to go after Loomis. He's got to go tie up all of his loose ends. We got Loomis. We got the brackets. We've got Laurie. And if you think about it, remember in part 1, the only people that ever gave a shit about Michael was his mother and to a lesser extent, baby sister. You know what I mean?
Danny Trejo. Yeah.
Oh, Danny Trejo. Yeah. But
Danny.
As if you remember, there's that one scene where he gives her the picture in the first film.
Yeah.
And I loved how it was realistic. She didn't know, I don't know who that baby is type of thing, but he's like, there's that last bit of attachment, and she, in her own way, realistically, pushes him away. So now he's definitely got nothing. So he's got no attachment to Laurie. So now it's time to end that. And people think that way. And that's what scares me. And that's what I like about Tyler. And again, it is the physicality. It is the brutality. It's just more scary for me. Some people love the grunts. Some people hate the grunts. I like it because he's full of rage. We've been told by Dr. Loomis since 1978, he's full of rage. He's finally letting the rage out. We can hear it. And to me, that just... It's
primal.
Yeah, it's very primal. There's more that oomph to it. You know what I mean? It's not just...
But here's a question.
But when he's letting it out, it sticks with me more.
Well, let me ask you a question, though. So, like, for instance, like, and I get it. This is a whole new interpretation of Michael. So you kind of have to look at it like that. But, like, I feel as though, like, what James did in the trilogy, there was a lot of brutal stuff and intensity in it, and it felt like and granted, in this interpretation, Michael is humanized quite a bit, which is fine, and it did open some nice doorways, obviously, for the trauma and also for a lot of the other characters. But I feel like, seeing, like, when James was killing people and there was obviously no grunting. He got his hand shot off and he barely let out a breath. And I'm just thinking to myself, how can he do that? Like, he's a man, he got old in the institution at Smith's Grove.
But he's the shape.
Right. So it's so you got these two things going on, and it's like, while I'm watching it, just like a lot of the other films, other than The Curse of Thorn, obviously, you're trying to figure out how, 2 plus 2 is supposed to equal 4. And I just find that interesting, or I should say more interesting, because now the question is always there with this. And even in the first film, and I thought, again, the Smith's Grove scenes, I love those scenes. I truly do. When we watched it in the theater, I was like, man, this is so cool seeing this. But at the same time, it takes away that mystique. And it's like, okay, when you start over explaining something, and we've seen it in all the major franchises, whether it's Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th, that's when you get into areas where you can really shut off some people, because you're kind of like, well, wait a minute, this or that. And I'm not saying you make movies based upon that alone, because you have to make your art. And if people like it, they like it. And if they don't, they don't. But I just feel like, when we see this version of Michael, and not in every scene, but I'm just talking about some specific stuff, like the grunting, or even when he talks, and it's like, well, it just feels like it takes away some of that mystique. Yeah, it's compelling, it's intense, it's scary, but it doesn't feel like the Michael Myers that has been brought to us, as this character, and through all the other iterations, they've had their changes, like you said earlier. They've played around with some things of the mythology, but one of the things that I think they kind of kept more often than not, maybe with the exception of 6, because they obviously talk about the curse. But there's always been this question of why, how, we don't get it. And I always thought that that made him more interesting. I really, really did. I mean, there's no doubt that Tyler was great and the physicality was impressive, but it just felt like it was being morphed into something that wasn't necessarily Halloween. Because Halloween, like I said, that mythology, But anyways,
Well,
Well,
I don't just want
go
to
ahead.
point
Yeah,
out
go ahead,
too,
Robert.
like Danielle, what she just wrote at the very bottom there. She's saying like you have already had the mystique for decades, and it's funny that she said that because I was thinking it and then she wrote it. Because I really think that even though it's part of a franchise, those two movies that he built are just kind of in their own universe. You almost have to
right,
look at it as it's a concept of Michael. But now, as far as I just want to add to what you said about the mask of, with he's demasked now, he's just walking around, he's got his face out for everyone to see.
right.
But what I think is that had he been walking around, because the movie started on October 29th, they tell us that in the beginning. Had he been walking around with that mask, he might have been, it might have drawn too much attention, even though it's only a
Oh
couple
yeah,
days before Halloween. So I think there's almost a little bit of thought there too, like, well, I'm kind of blending in if I don't have the mask on until at the moment I'm killing someone, and then I'll put it on.
yeah,
And I just thought, well, that was the fact that he wanted him, he specifically has said, even in interviews, I wanted him to be a serial killer. I wanted
yeah,
him just to be this gigantic man,
Mm-hmm.
that can be killed, but he's Michael, but in a different universe kind of Michael. It's kind of like
yeah,
we've seen Marvel movies, like the
yeah,
different Spider-Man and all those different ones. You almost have to look at it as that. Like, this is a Michael from a different time, a different universe.
Mm-hmm.
If
yeah.
that helps you to watch it, did you you don't have to tell me if you didn't, but did you rewatch this for this episode, or did you already just like,
Oh
you're
yeah.
just fine? Okay.
I've seen this movie. I've probably seen this movie more than, most people have watched some of their favorite horror movies. I mean, channel wise and so forth. Um, and like I said, there's aspects of it that I do enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are some aspects of it that are great. As a matter of fact, my personal opinion of it as well, I think it's a great slasher. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Because it has a lot of great elements slasher wise. I just feel as though it's not a great Halloween film because I feel as though a lot of things have been changed so much that it blends in with a lot of regular slashers. You know what I'm saying? And even though, and it's not so much that I'm hating on it because
Mm-hmm.
I saw the original when I was whatever I was, 7 or 8 back in the late 80s. But I mean, it's like I just think that, for what he was trying to do, from the first film to the next film, and he's even said it. Like Rob Zombie has literally said it. It's like two different types of movies. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect with Michael, there's a disconnect with Laurie, and we understand why, especially with Laurie, because the first film she was, only in it like 50% of the movie, 60% of the movie. So, but I just feel as though the choices that he made, some of which he had to, based upon the studio interference. But it is what it is. We can only judge it by what we see. But I just
Right.
feel as though just looking at these two, even if I look at these two movies alone, I'm just thinking to myself, well, it's kind of interesting to see this background, but there's no mystery to it. I know why he's doing what he does, especially with his stepfather. I mean, that alone can like really mess you up. But no one in that first film, you said it too, Eric, no one in that first film, other than a couple people, were like even decent to him. It's almost like
Right.
the whole world, except for Loomis, obviously his mother, everybody was a jerk to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying obviously that happens in the real world, but to me, it's almost like it's creating the character in a way that's kind of like, oh, okay, well, I could just watch Hatchet and kind of get a
Mm-hmm.
similar slasher type of vibe. But what I think is cool about Michael, what makes the franchise and him as a character so special is the mystique and how that's portrayed. Because otherwise, if you really think about it, otherwise he could be the most boring of the big four. You know what I'm saying? At
Mm-hmm.
least Freddy's got a great backstory, a great look. He's got the whole dream sequence stuff. Jason's at Camp Crystal Lake, so you got that whole ambiance of the forest and stuff, and obviously, things with Pamela and all of that. Even Ghostface can be anybody at any time, so that can be interesting too. The mystique is what made Michael, to me anyways, stand out from the others, because otherwise he's just a guy with a knife and he's killing people, which is fine because I love slashers.
See, that's the thing, though.
But
You said, art, or you compared this to like an artist and his work. Art is also very subjective. It's what you get from it. And like I've said, it just depends on how you take the character that's already been presented. So I like Michael as a horror character, but I've never been attached to him. You know what I mean?
And I think
when it comes to something different, that's why I enjoy it. You know, because the realism, I appreciate the mystery and why he does this, but I'm not attached to it. I don't want to say I don't care, because I do, because it is an interesting aspect, but it's not like something I grasp upon and like, oh, okay, you've sullied it now, you know?
Right.
Well, and I think if you're stuck on calling it a slasher, I think you're doing a disservice to yourself, if you don't mind me saying so. I think because it's such a psychological movie, it's more psychological than it is a slasher. The slasher is almost a secondary story to this. Do you agree, Eric?
Yeah. Because
secondary story.
Because I agree with that.
Psychological wise, you see, and you know, we haven't gotten even into the whole ghost mom, or not even ghost mom, but like the visions. We haven't even gotten into the imagery of that. But I will say, I can tell what he was trying to do with it, because he was looking into even the young, like Carl Jung. He read a book on Carl Jung. He liked that. He liked the psychology of someone like, what is his name? Vincent Bugliosi, the fact that he profited off of the Manson murders. He wanted to go in deeper. He wanted that character of Loomis even to have more layers to him. Like he said, we've seen Donald Pleasance. We've seen what he can do. Let's see what can come of someone who is taking and profiting from people's loss and these murders, and what kind of scum of the earth that he could be. And he, you know, obviously it was inspired by that, but I feel like psychologically he gave us so much in this movie. And if we're not even looking at that part, we're missing so much. Do you agree? I mean, do you guys agree with that?
Little scenes like that.
I agree.
Like when she's with Margot Kidder. God bless Margot Kidder. That was rough for me last night. You know, me and I were big Superman fans. It was rough watching her. You know, we grew up with her. We know about her trauma. So that, for me, someone who grew up with her, I felt more attached to her being someone who is in real life dealt with trauma and couldn't surpass it. She's now playing a character that's helping someone on pretty much maybe the same path that she was in real life. And then the emotions were brought out in Margot's performance. Just little things sprinkled in like that brings the realism. You can tell that she's in the movie maybe 5 minutes, but she's a great yin to the yang of a doctor who no longer gives a shit in Loomis. It shows there is still good in this world of garbage type people. You know what I mean? And we have, and well, again, whether that's Rob's intention or not, I don't know. That's how I took it, though. You know, we're going to get, bracket those little bits of light in this dark, depressing world that Rob's already created. And now he's taken us and thrown his head first into it big time. And it's needed. It's like, it's maybe the wrong term to use, but like with comic relief, you're so intense, and then suddenly, somebody does something goofy. You can't just have such a freaking depressing movie. And as depressing as this movie can be, and how it can put your emotions in the basement, there are those little bits of light. Good characters. There are good characters. And those are few and far between in Rob's universe of films, because he's known for these trashy, bad people. And when we get those little bits of light, it's refreshing. And that's why, because it's been a while since I've watched this one. And once Barb, like, for everybody in the chat, this is like 2 months in the making. She hit me up and we were talking about this. I didn't watch it at all. So it's probably been a good year, maybe a couple years. And I wanted to wait until we set the date up for tonight. And I didn't realize, like, I always loved Brad Dourif, but I just didn't realize how good of a person, character-wise, Margot Kidder as the therapist was. And it's neat, and it is needed in this film. Otherwise, it's just like,
Well,
God, I can't take much more.
Here's the thing too, and we've talked about this before. Like Brad Dourif, in general, is the light in this film, and unfortunately, he doesn't get nearly enough screen time. I mean, he gets what he gets, he's great with, but that's the other.
Very well.
It is used very well, but that's the other thing too, is that, and again, some people, we were just talking about it. God, I can't remember which stream. It was a recent stream. Some people enjoy films that have a lot of that darkness, and they can pull whatever they want out of it, whether it's the darkness itself or performances or what have you. Like take Last House on the Left. I was talking about that with someone, I can't remember. And that's a film that, it's a really great film. I love Wes, but that's just a film that I'm not going to watch a lot because it's so dark. That doesn't mean that I don't think that it has a lot of greatness to it. But in this film, and you said it perfectly, you got Brad Dourif, who literally is one of the few lights. Margot Kidder was as well, but I don't really count her because it was only like 5 minutes and it was kind of like a quick scene. But I think that's something that was kind of missing in the film, because in other films, even that Rob Zombie has done, even if you look at Devil's Rejects, I mean, you've got the family that's kidnapped. They're a good family, and you're kind of riding with them a little bit. House of a Thousand Corpses, you got the kids that find the Firefly camp and so forth. But in this film, you don't have anyone because everyone is trashed, which is fine. But I think personally, and he said it too, that could have been a little too far, because it's like, who am I rooting for? I want to root for Laurie, and I do, but at the same time, he's really put her in this position where it's like, this would have been, I guess what I'm saying is, this would have been a movie where having, like, let's say if Brad Dourif had more screen time, and let's say if he had at least a scene or two with him and, Brad and Scout, where he's trying to help her or whatever, or either Danielle, like they had some great scenes together, but they had their blow up, when Annie came to the bedroom and Laurie was freaking out on her. It's like, we needed a little bit more of that, in my opinion, of that, because it's almost like everyone is like just so depressing and dark. And it's like and obviously Loomis does have his character shift at the end, so that was cool, but it almost felt like that was wasted in a way, because it's like, well, bro, you made your choices based on real life, and that happens in real life. But it's like, I don't care about you either. When Michael said die, which he shouldn't have said, but when he said it and killed him, I was like, I don't care about Loomis anymore. But it felt so different from the Loomis we saw in the first film. And I'm not saying that people can't change, but it just feels like, character-wise, that's some of the disconnect that's there. You know what I mean? I mean, and you can kind of take it both ways, because sometimes you want a heavy movie. Sometimes I'm in the mood for a heavy movie. This is definitely a heavy movie.
You're right. Watching this or versus watching something like, I'm looking at Eric, like Friday 3 or something.
Yeah, right.
Because I was just thinking of like the fun ones that are, or like Halloween 3, even if we're gonna say Halloween 3, how it's kind of a fun, it doesn't have Michael so much, but you think of a movie like that and the contrast with something like this, you're right. It's very dark. It's not something that I can watch all the time. Like I had to pump myself up to watch it, and I had to watch it in pieces, because if you have had trauma in your life with someone passing away in a horrible way, it weighs on you. And so movies like this are a little harder. They have more of an impact. So, oh my gosh, like you're right though, because you have fun with a lot of the, I mean, you were brought it up too behind the scenes about Resurrection. It's just meant to be a fun movie. Yeah. It's a fun movie in the Halloween franchise, whereas this one is just very, you have to say
there's not a lot of fun in it.
There's not a lot of fun.
And which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like one of my favorite scenes is the scene where they're eating pizza.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's a great scene.
It's great because it shows how they've changed. She's Laurie. Danielle, Annie, now all she cares about is whole wheat pizza crust and egg whites and that type of shit. And poor Brad Dourif is stuck in the middle. He's like, I just want my coffee and my sticky buns. You know what I mean? But it's great because the chemistry between those three.
I wanted more of that.
Great.
Yeah. And I don't blame you for that.
I understand that, but I think it was used perfectly to show, air quotes, happy-go-lucky family in the beginning, trauma or not.
Right.
And then we have that little bit of sweetness. Oh, Dad, you didn't get whole wheat crust. Shit, I forgot.
Marvin the Martian.
Yeah.
Marvin the Martian.
You've never seen Cat Baloo? He stands up and does his little impression. They're looking at him like, what the fuck are you doing, Dave? Like, and he literally says, he's like, thanks for making me feel as old as Methuselah. You know what I mean?
Then we go to the scene where Michael's chowing down and stuff like that. And it's like, come on, man. Let's,
eat. It's not the first time he ate a dog.
No, it's not. But here's the thing. And we talked about this too. It's like, look, I don't necessarily need to see Michael having Thanksgiving dinner or going to the bathroom. Same thing with Freddy or Jason or Ghostface. But to me, that's an example of a shift that, it was fine. And it's stark. It makes me say, oh, I remember in the theater, I was like, what is going on? And my brother's like, yeah, he's eating that. And I'm like, holy shit, and that's fine for a reaction like that. But back to the pizza scene specifically, I think that obviously it was great, but I wish that they could have had a little bit more of that. And I'm not saying that I wanted it to be a happy-go-lucky movie, because obviously the whole idea of this movie is the trauma. But I just think that there were things, I just think that it's imbalanced. And I think those are some of the things that could have brought it back to a good balance. Because like I said, I think there's some things that kind of like, I know what he's trying to do, but it's just it's not adding up for me. Just like with the visions, it's like, I know exactly what he's trying to do. I'll never forget, my brother looked over at me and said, look, I know what he's trying to do with this, but this is just not working for me. And I'm like, and that's why whenever we talked about it, he'd sit there and be talking about white horse. And, we can have fun with that. But in all seriousness, I get that he was trying to give us that connection with Michael as well. His visions of things and so forth, and how that connects to Laurie and so forth. But I just think it was just weird. Not weird, but I just think it was imbalanced. What did you guys think about the way he handled the visions? I mean, like, we know what he was trying to do, but we know what he was trying to do. But I really feel like what came out in the film, and Rob Zombie spoke about this as well. He felt like, maybe he kind of zigged when he should have zagged a little bit. Not that he didn't like doing that, but I think he also realized that what he was trying to do got missed out on a lot of people. What did you guys think of it?
Well, okay, first of all, I think one of the reasons why I actually really liked the white horse imagery was because years and years, probably for a couple decades now, I have always thought it's really cool to look up symbolism from your dreams. Always thought that was cool. And I feel like if anyone in the chat has never looked up colors, if you're dreaming of colors, numbers, water, what that water looks like when you're dreaming of it, animals, anytime that happens and you wake up and you remember your dream, you dreamed of a tiger. What was the tiger doing? Go to something like dreammoods.com, because it tells you what your dream was about. And if you're not doing that, you're missing out on a piece of life that I hate to be all like whatever, but I feel like you're missing out on something. Your dreams are a tool on how to deal with real life things in your present, like when you're in your waking life. It's helping you to work through things.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Rachel. But so being that I had that background already where I was always like waking up from a dream and I can remember a lot of my dreams, I thought that was so cool that he read this book about Carl Jung and interpreting dreams, that he included that in this movie. I was like, oh my gosh, I've not seen movies that really do that a whole lot. And so the fact that he took this white horse, which I think the irony of is that when you look up dreammoods.com or something, white horse doesn't mean, he took the opposite of it. White horse means like purity and innocent. And he was like, nope, this is my game. I'm going to change this up. And so he made it into rage and, violence.
Because one thing, I don't mean to step on your toes.
No, you go ahead.
A lot of people don't remember this because they're just focused on the white horse itself. The movie itself starts with a description of its symbolism. And it's literally on the screen 15 seconds.
Yep.
99% of the time, people will forget that he tells you what it symbolizes.
Yeah.
But people just forget. So
let me can I jump in and just to ask one thing too, Eric? Like, and I pretty much know a lot of your thoughts because we've talked about this a lot ourselves. But for Sherry in this film, and there's always that joke about Rob has to have Sherry in his movies or whatever. It's fine. Yeah. I don't have any issue with it. But do you think? And I know this isn't Deborah herself, but I'm just saying, as far as Sherry portraying the character through Michael, do you think that diminishes the good that she had, or at least to me anyways, and I know you enjoyed her too, the good that she built up in the first film? Because it's obviously a big contrast, and we know why, but I'm just saying, based upon what we see on the screen. Because look, man, when I look at this, and I'm just thinking to myself, come on, man, we had such a great character arc and a build-up in that first film. And because he went to 100, with the visions and with Deborah, I feel as though, again, that's part of the imbalance that I'm talking about. If they had a couple of scenes where, he saw them, they're walking down the street, tiptoeing through the tulips, whatever, that'd have been fine. But instead, we have the scenes where let's do it, honey, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I just feel it went a little too far. What did you think about, well, obviously your idea of the visions, but also about Deborah?
I don't think it tarnishes Deborah at all, because it's not her. Like I've said before, with remakes and OGs, the original's still there.
Yeah.
Again, looking at this, I wanted to look at this in the way of trauma. Jamie Lee Curtis said her whole freaking trilogy was about trauma. You know what I mean? That's how she promoted the entire David Gordon Green trilogy. This movie is about trauma.
Right.
Everybody deals with it in their own aspect in this film. And I was looking at it, maybe, and again, me, I always go left field. With trying to make things work. Or maybe, whether this is my interpretation, maybe Michael's dealing with his own trauma too. Remember?
Oh, absolutely.
And that's why, like, finally, now he's seeing this vision of his mom, and it's not her. It's not the sweet, loving Deborah that we remember. It's this ghostly visage that just doesn't care anymore. She says, Michael, we got to end this. And he's just like, you know what? Again, this is the only one, Danny Trejo, Loomis, they count too. The baby in its own way counts, Angel. This is the only one who, on a day-to-day basis, showed that she cared. Like, Loomis didn't come in until he was, 10 years old, 10 years old, whatever. So Deborah, Mama's been there since the beginning. So she's the only one from day one that has shown him love. And now he has nothing. If his only love is saying it's over, that's his motivation. And who's he going to? I mean, we always joke about Jason being a mama's boy. Michael is being mama's boy here.
Absolutely.
Bad choice of words. You know what I mean? Because mama's boy makes it sound wimpy, but he's doing the bidding of the one person that looked out for him. No one else did. Not even his sister gave a crap about him.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, he's definitely dealing with trauma.
So and that's how I looked at it. And even though they're not making him sympathetic. Right. And a lot of people might take my description of that way. That's not my intention at all. He's not sympathetic. No way. Not at all. But it's just that point is like, that's his motivation. He's got nothing left. And he's just finishing the chapters of his book, tying up all the loose ends, however you want to say it. And Mama's given him this motivation to do so. It's now time. You've waited your 2 years doing whatever you're doing. Right. Time to end it.
Time to stop asking for money.
Do you remember in the beginning though, when they're showing the mom and him, sitting in the institution, and he says, Mom, I had a dream about you, that you were in a beautiful white gown. And so he was saying, so that kind of went throughout the movie. Then that was the dream that he had of her, and that continued throughout the movie. It was consistent, as that's his vision of his mother. And then with the mother, he's seeing that 10-year-old version of himself, because in his mind, even though he's this killing machine, he's still that young boy. He just never quite got out of that whole, headspace.
Well, that was
Mhm.
definitely the setup that Rob used because, obviously that wasn't from the first film. We
Right.
know that because it's the different actor from Michael, which, that was smart. And like you said, Eric, I mean, he's dealing with his own things in his head, which, there's an aspect of that I think number one is interesting, and number two, it does follow a bridge from the first film because
Mhm.
we saw in the first film what he was going through, so it does make sense really to kind of go down this path with him. I just think again, it's like you just kind of have to, sometimes you just got to pull back a little bit because
Mhm.
if you have moments where the tone shifts and you've got this huge imbalance in the middle of the film. I'm watching Return to Oz and all this type of stuff.
Yeah,
It's
that
like
stuff I did
it
not like.
it
I'll
makes
fully say I
you
didn't like. That was too. He went 100% Rob with that, and
Oh
right,
yeah, it
that's
was
when
so
he should.
artistic.
That's when he should have pulled back big time.
right.
You know what I thought of that?
yeah.
I thought you had this budget and that's what you chose to spend it on. That was my only complaint. You chose to spend it on that. Like that had
Yeah.
to cost you some money.
It looked beautiful. Like it was.
Yeah.
Listen, here's the thing. I want to make sure I put this out there because we have a whole bunch of people in the chat and coming in and out. So we appreciate you guys being here. But look, there's a lot of beautiful stuff in this film too. I also think the camera work in
Oh,
general
yeah.
was
Mhm.
better in the second film than the first
That
film because
silhouette when
yeah,
he's in the field and we just see
yes,
Yes.
him. Oh my god,
yes,
that looked amazing.
that was a great scene.
And
Because
when he
in the
lifted the car,
Mhm.
it was, look, man,
yeah.
he literally, I did it in my Why You Hate episode. He literally lifted that from the Incredible Hulk with Bill Bixby and Lou
Mhm.
Ferrigno. When Lou Ferrigno, as the Hulk, picked up a car, and no, but I'm just saying it's awesome because I love the Incredible Hulk. But
Mhm.
the camera work, I think, was better in this one too, because in the first one we had, especially in the second half, we had this we had the choppy cam thing going on, and I'm like, what are we doing? I can't see. It wasn't as well lit. I know it's supposed to be dark, when he's attacking Laurie and everything, but it just didn't add up for me as well. So,
Mhm.
there are great things in this film. And that scene, the Return to Oz scene, it looks great. It's creepy as hell. When I was in the theater, I turned to Kill and I was like, what are we doing now, bro? This is taking me back to my childhood. And I looked over at, true story, Eric, you can ask Kill. I look over at Kill and he's sitting there. He was eating popcorn. He's literally got some popcorn in his hand in front of his mouth, like he can't eat it. And I wanted,
Yeah.
he's my little brother, even though we're obviously adults now. I wanted to give him a hug or something. I'm like, it's okay, bro. We're not 10 anymore. Somehow we're getting the live action version of Return to Oz. What are we doing? So, I have fun with that. But honestly, like you guys said, I just think that pull back on that a little bit.
Mhm.
We obviously know Laurie is dealing with a lot. Pull back a little bit. Maybe it could have been anything else. You know what I'm saying? Well, not anything else, but it could have been something better or something
Yeah.
more in line. Let me say it this way, more in line with what he was doing in this film, and it would have been better in my opinion, because that was just so that
Can
was
I
so
Knight,
left
can I ask
field.
you a question about that though? Did that not
Yeah,
remind you of Pan's Labyrinth?
it did. You're right. It did. It did. And I love Pan's Labyrinth. That's one of my favorite films of all time. And so
Really?
and
I didn't know that.
yeah, I love
We're
that
all getting
film.
schooled tonight.
Gear, and for people in the chat, see the unfortunate thing, and Eric knows this as well, other than obviously Corey and Kill. Eric knows this very well. I'd love to talk about Pan's Labyrinth and stuff like that, but the YouTube algorithm is a beast,
Well,
and
Nate, now, is
it's
that
hard.
something could you do something like that on the Patreon maybe? Would that be
Maybe,
different? Like,
maybe,
okay. Ooh.
maybe. You never know. You
I'm
never
saying
know.
I would tune in for that. Listen, I told you I'm subscribed to this one and Patreon. I don't want to miss a
Yeah.
thing.
You are, and I appreciate that. But no, I mean, Pan's Labyrinth is awesome, and Guillermo del Toro is he's such a visionary. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? I love him and what he does with his projects. But yes, that scene definitely had that flavor, and
Yeah.
it just, and again, I don't mind, like, taking swings in a film.
Mhm.
And again, this is just a small thing. This is definitely not the thing that I'm most hung up on in the film, but it's just one of those examples of where it's like, bro, you know, you're building up this character dealing with trauma. I'm buying it. I'm feeling it. She's got a great performance, so forth and so forth. But then when you do things like that, it's like, well, wait a minute now. What, you know? So I say that just to say that it's just one of those small little bumps in the road. That's
As
all.
someone that's here defending Rob Zombie's H2, even I can't defend that scene. Like I personally don't like it. I maybe just don't get it. It's one of those scenes that sticks out in a great movie, for my opinion, that just sticks out like a sore thumb. Lost Boys are great, but then we got Corey Haim playing in the bathtub. It just sticks out like a sore thumb.
No, hold on. Wait a minute. We don't mess with Corey Haim.
Oh, I will if he's doing.
Speaking of which, well, let me say one thing though. Now, and I just did my Why You Hate for the Lost Boys. And by the way, if you guys haven't seen that, please check that out.
Oh yeah.
But I will say this. See, with the law, and not that we're talking about the Lost Boys, but I just want to say one thing. That scene, because it's funny you say that because, and we have talked about the Lost Boys on Battle World, but to me, that scene, it worked because his character in the film, this young boy that's carefree, moving to this new town, idolizing his big brother, who's definitely got a lot on his plate, pun intended. And it's just a moment where a young kid is just singing in the bathtub. Now, look, man, I'm not trying to, give you guys any proof or anything, but I've had a couple of times when I've sung in the bathtub myself. So for me, when I see, the late great Corey Haim in that scene, it at least for me, it worked because his character in the Lost Boys was kind of like us. He was our avatar, you know what I'm saying? We saw the world through his eyes, dealing with vampires and teaming up with friggin' Corey Feldman. So that didn't take me out of the movie as much. I could understand how it could, because obviously it's a horror movie and it's a very lighthearted moment, but here's another and I'm not trying to compare the two, but and I just did the episode and a lot of research for it, but they literally wanted those type of things in the Lost Boys, having levity and the brotherly love. And, Corey Haim's character was happy-go-lucky, where Michael was kind of the brooding 18-year-old on the brink of adulthood and being turned into a vampire. So that's an example, at least for me, that's an example of how you can do some, I don't know, crazy swings, I guess. I don't even think it's a really crazy swing because he's a little kid. But that's an example of doing something like that and it works versus going back to Oz without Dorothy. And I'm just saying, man, it's like apples and oranges to me, but I get it.
Is, but
I get it.
Again, art's subjective, but that's true. One of those moments that I always bring up that for me sticks out like a sore thumb. We always go to Jesse. We always go to Jesse dancing in Elm Street too. You don't need that scene. We don't. That's true. You don't need Corey Haim playing in a bubble bath, covered in shampoo. You could have had moments of levity.
Eric is not having it
differently.
Eric
is plenty of levity in the Lost Boys.
That's true.
So it can be looked at as a horror comedy. There's plenty of levity.
Oh yeah.
We didn't need that one specific moment, and I only bring that up because it is one specific moment in H2 that we did not need. He went full, tried to go full levity in Lost Boys. He went full Rob with Return to Oz, and it made no sense to me. It looked pretty, but just because something looked pretty, you can still have that as a deleted scene. You know what I mean? On the DVD. So, but the visions itself, other than that, did not really bother me because it helped me. Again, a lot of people in the chat they don't like the humanization of Michael, and I do. So that could be why I pulled more towards that with his trauma. And a lot of people don't realize, like, I know you do, Knight, and you do, Barb. He is going through his own trauma too. He has been since he was basically born. You know what I mean? Or at least since his father died, and we got Ronnie in the picture. So, and he's still dealing with that. So that's why I don't mind the visions at all, other than Jack Skellington showing up for 30 seconds.
But I will say, there's different movies in the franchise that it's a mood thing, right? Like when I feel like Halloween 3, just to use that one again, I feel like that's a movie that has to be a mood for me too. I don't always want to watch goofy 80s, like sometimes I just want my Michael Myers and that's it. But
That's right. Well, and it's a roller coaster. this is another thing I look at. If we talk about the big three, or even we talk about the big four, I mean, to me, Scream has the most consistency franchise wise.
Sure.
And then it gets interesting. I still think Friday has more consistency than Halloween or Elm Street. And it could be a toss up between Halloween and Elm Street, to be quite honest with you. But Halloween they've tried to do interesting things. They've tried to have more levity in their films. They try to, do the explanation with the curse and so forth. And then they tried to be hip and cool with things like H2O and obviously Resurrection. So this is par for the course, when you really step back. That's why, like what we were saying earlier, it's not so much that, I'm married to the franchise before these films, because this franchise has always done different things. Even Halloween 2 itself in 81 was different than Carpenter's. You know what I mean? I mean, it's going to be, because it's, new stories by new people. But the interesting thing about it is, like you said, Barb, sometimes you're in the mood for one thing or another. And I just think that, for me anyways, when I look at the franchise, and, we've done our rankings, and obviously we did the great debate, because of the imbalance, and also because it's heavy in a good way. But that's why it's always been one of those movies that I have the struggles with. It's almost like it's got great parts, but the totality of it is where I start to kind of lose some of the sight. Barb, let me jump to you too, because I know that you had other talking points that you wanted to get to as well. What are some of the other things, if you want to speak about them, that is, that really draw you to the movie, as far as saying, well, these are other positive aspects that I really enjoyed in the film?
Well, I think finding out too, like finding out little bits and pieces, like I said, the Manson thing, how he used that, and he actually put a Manson. This is something I didn't see the first couple of watchings, that he had. I don't know how I missed it, but she has a Manson photo above her bed.
Yep.
And I don't know how I missed it. I feel like with movies we catch things a little bit more. Even with the Scream franchise, I still pick up things, and I've seen that dozens of times. But
Right.
seeing that, and there's another YouTube creator that has said, like, that doesn't make sense why you would put that. Okay, but trauma doesn't make sense.
Right.
Trauma doesn't fit into it's not a perfect puzzle piece ever. So the fact that she leaned into that, like almost this anarchy kind of way of, you've seen her bathroom, you've seen her bedroom, showing that it has taken me a while to come to grips with the fact that while she used to be unlikable to me, I almost just give her so much grace now. I give her so much grace, because when you are going through something, when you're grieving something, it turns you into a different person.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, you don't recognize yourself always.
Right.
Yeah.
On some days. And I feel like she was so broken that I don't think she would have come back from that. And that says a lot, because like Eric, you were talking about with Margot Kidder, her doctors, her psychiatrist saying to her, we don't want to put you in the hospital, because Laurie says, well, you're just wanting to put me in the hospital. That's why you won't give me any more pills. And she says, no, like, I don't think you're going to recover well in the hospital.
Right.
I want you to recover here.
Yeah.
So just little things like that you pick up kind of more as you're watching it. Again, with the unrated version, you see more of her interaction with that doctor than you do in the theatrical. And she's yelling in her face.
Oh yeah.
Something that would have been jarring for me is like, if I was in the position of the psychiatrist, it would have been like, but she didn't back up. She's just like, no, I want to help you.
Yeah.
I just loved that role for her. And I felt like all of the little symbolisms and stuff throughout the movie, you just don't, these trauma pieces that we see now that are very trendy in movies. And I feel like Halloween 2 was kind of came before its time. I feel like people weren't ready for that yet. Little like metaphorical type things in movies. People really weren't ready for it. And then Babadook came out. Everybody loved that. And it's just like, but he tried to do something and you guys hated it, you know? So I guess that's why, and I've said this before, like on my channel, I try to look at some of the underrated movies and pull positives from it. I mean, Eric, you and I, we're gonna go into like Jason Takes Manhattan. I want to challenge myself because I know we're talking about Halloween right now, but I want to challenge myself to find good in a movie that has been the weakest link for me for years. I just haven't liked it. I kept saying I'm never gonna watch that one again. But I like finding that in movies, just like you do the Why You Hate series. You don't really hate the movie, but you're trying to find a balance. Like, okay, well, this is what people complain about, and here's why maybe that is. And I just find in movies like this, it almost draws me to it a little bit more because I'm like, well, why do people hate it so much? And then I'll watch it and I'll say, well, but I'm seeing something different than what other people are saying, and I know I can't flip. That's your favorite? Jason Takes Manhattan's your favorite? Okay. I was like, wait a minute.
You can't take anything that man says.
I'm not the only one that pokes the bear when it comes to night.
Dang it, man.
But I will say this though, and Eric knows this. You know, we've ranked all of these franchises and many others that aren't super popular, like these legacy franchises. But even with Jason Takes Manhattan, knowing the backstory, like, you know, I did the episode of Why You Hate on Jason Takes Manhattan. And of course, there's a lot of stuff that went behind the scenes, what they wanted to do, what they weren't able to do, and what they ultimately did. And there's still good stuff in there. You know what I mean? Just like with Halloween 2, it's just a question of, you know, how does it hit you? You know, and like Eric said too, both of you have said, art hits everyone differently, you know. Now, I can enjoy, you know, Jason Takes Manhattan for what it is, and it's part of my favorite franchise. So there's that, but it's not the first one I'll pick. You know what I mean? Because there were issues with it, but there's parts of it that I really enjoy, and so that, you know, it's interesting because. Not that these are the same type of movies whatsoever, but it's a similar type of vibe. Same thing with Freddy's Dead. And Eric, you know, we've had conversations about that. I love Lisa Zane. I love her. Yaphet Kotto. They're fantastic. They might be the best characters in the whole franchise, the Elm Street franchise.
At least Yaphet is, pretty close.
I mean, Yaphet is amazing. But the movie is so imbalanced. It has these moments where it's really high concept, and then we're doing Looney Tunes. And then there's times where they're just smashing it together and throwing it on the wall. And so, you know, same type of ideas. Like I can see some of the goodness in it. There's some things that work fairly well, and there might be some days where I'll enjoy it as a whole more than others, but it's got those flaws, you know what I'm saying? So it's a parallel of sorts. The only difference, in my opinion, is I think with Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and Eric, you can quote this.
Sure.
It's probably the best example of not so much being true to yourself, but like he reinvented things and went in his own path. Whereas like with Freddy's Dead, or even Manhattan, or even Jason Goes to Hell, or Resurrection, you know, they were taking the formula and they were trying to just tweak it to like freshen it up, but it didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel organic because they were just like, okay, now Jason has a magical dagger and we're linked to the Evil Dead. Okay, well, that's fine, but could we find a better way to show that? You know what I mean? Can we lead up to that a little bit better story-wise so I can at least buy into it more? Whereas with this, Oz withstanding, in general, I'm following what he's doing. You know what I'm saying? I think he goes to the edge of the cliff a little too much, but I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to literally show us Michael, what his life was like. He's traumatized, the reason he becomes Michael. And even in Halloween 2, one thing that a lot of people don't talk about, they're literally showing Laurie turning into Michael, or turning into that darkness, you know, which is an interesting thing in and of itself. She talked about it herself. Am I turning into him? Is that darkness infecting me? That's a very interesting concept. And you literally see her do that when she gets to the point where she's picking up the knife. She's got the mask on. it's interesting. Some of the roads we traveled on to get there weren't great roads, but it's interesting. So I can honestly say that Halloween 2 does a much better job of switching up the formula than something like Freddy's Dead or Manhattan or Goes to Hell or even Resurrection. You know what I mean?
Well, I
Because
want to
it
know
felt
if
authentic.
I'm so curious, and I would to have a conversation with that guy. Doesn't it just seem like it would be such a cool? You see him in a bar, go sit down and have a conversation for an hour with Rob Zombie.
There are
Yeah.
times
Well,
when
I wouldn't.
honestly, I will put Rob Zombie interviews on YouTube and just listen because he's such
Yeah.
an
Yes.
amazing man.
He was on Joe Rogan. That's a great
he's so
episode.
smart. Like he's
I'll
so
look for that.
smart.
Thank you, Nate.
He's lived a life. You know what I mean? He grew up in the carnival lifestyle. His grandparents ran carnivals, like the carny lifestyle. So he knows how to hustle. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He's lived a rock star life. He cannot get his ass out of the 1960s and 70s for some reason, which is okay, but he has that vibe and it works for him. He likes his trashy characters. But if people really look at the man behind all that, you realize he knows his stuff. He's very charismatic. He is freaking hilarious in interviews.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Interesting
And
guy.
I've always said sometimes too, and again, this is just me speaking, my own opinion. I think a lot of people just hate on Rob to hate on Rob. They don't like his films. And a lot of times they judge him and they judge it before it even comes out and sitting down and watching the film.
Yeah.
Well, I think people have said this too. I've watched a lot of the stuff online. People don't like that he puts assault in, and I get that, but I think people shut down after seeing a couple of his movies. I mean, the theatrical, no, I'm sorry, no, the director's cut of the Halloween one.
Yes.
It went there, and I actually prefer the theatrical on the first one, and I prefer the director's cut on this second one for different reasons.
Right.
But I feel like he pulled I was going to say, to sit and have a conversation with him to find out, were you inspired by Halloween 5? Because he pulled a lot from Halloween 5. And Eric, the scene that you loved in Halloween 5 with cinematography wise, where she's getting chased in the field. Do you remember how you told me that you liked the way the lighting was? They used that same lighting when they cut away from Sheriff Brackett finding Annie, and you were just kind of, kind of grieving with him and just giving that a moment. And they cut away in silence, and we see Laurie running through the field. That same lighting is there. Go back and rewatch even just that scene. That same lighting is there. And then when he picks up the car and they're showing the light shining behind him, I swear to you, I think he pulled inspiration from Halloween 5.
It wouldn't surprise me.
It could be.
He was a huge fan of the original and the franchise. He was he was so excited to do his vision, which, again, that's the type of and it's no shade to 5. I mean, that could be a whole nother stream. Eric knows that. But you had a director come in on 5 that had never even watched the movies. He had, and it's like, okay, and I'm not saying that makes him bad or whatever. Look at Ronnie Yu with Freddy versus Jason. It is what it is. But you had in Rob Zombie someone who literally was a fan. Like he pretty much could be one of us, that type of vibe. And he comes in, and obviously studio stuff, behind the scenes stuff really tainted that first film and made things even more difficult with him in the second film. And of course, he didn't even want to do the third film. And it's just interesting. It's just really interesting. But I know he's such a student of film and a student of horror. It would not surprise me whatsoever if he didn't pull from 5 and even there are elements from the other films as well.
I think it's, I mean, it's hard not to, right? And then, I mean, that psychic link that we saw between Laurie and her brother. We see that in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. We see that with Jamie Lloyd and Michael. I just feel like there's so much there that might be something, if you ever want to kind of just do a comparison, I think that could be fun for you, just seeing where he drew certain things. Might make you love it more. I'm trying.
She's trying. Give her an A for effort.
Wait a minute, man. Look, I didn't know we were going there. But I mean, look, you love him. But no, seriously. No, I'm just playing with you. But no, I mean, but listen, no, seriously, it's interesting because talking about these films the way we do, because we go we go deeper, right?
Mhm.
Well, at least we try to, and I
Right.
think we do a pretty good job. But whether it's in videos, discussions, live streams, battle world, all these different things, I think that's what we try to do, is try to get a deeper sense of what we saw. And this film, admittedly, it's become a film that I've enjoyed
Mhm.
more over time, because I learned more about it, because I've looked deeper into it, and I'm also watched it and tried to see, okay, these are things that are really good, and blah 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 blah. So I play around with it quite a bit. I don't hate it.
Mhm.
I just think that there were some choices made that didn't make it a great Halloween film. And interestingly enough, like when we did the debates, and I actually had the paper here, and I'd forgotten some of the scores when we did the debate, and we went, category over category. It just the numbers kind of said that as well. Like some things, we had high scores. We had a 5 for characters. We had
Mhm.
some in the middle. We had a 5 for atmosphere. That's a
Yep.
top score for Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. But then we had things like the mask. The mask was kind of in the middle, because some of the people on the panel, they were like, yeah, we like the rawness of it. And other people were like, but it's kind of like blah, blah, blah. So the scores that we had, and I'm not saying it's definitive by any means,
Right.
but
Of course not.
the purpose of the great debates, for me anyways, as a host and content creator, was to kind of take multiple people, and also we had some scores from the audience, and just say, let's break this down bit
Mhm.
by bit, and let's give it a score, and let's just see where that score ends up. And it's a polarizing movie, we know that, but the scores kind of showed that to a degree. Now again, if we had a panel, and I always try to make sure the panel is people that they can be um
Impartial.
impartial enough to really say, okay, that worked, or
Mhm.
no, that didn't, whether they love the film or not. But also
Mhm.
try to switch up people in the panel too. um but it just speaks to me about how, and I'm not saying the way I look at it is the right way, but what I'm saying is, to me, there's just those things where it's like, yes, and then there's those things that are like, not exactly.
Mhm.
And that score that we got from that spoke that way. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I mean, like I said, looking at it, the numbers are all over the place.
Mhm.
We've got a couple of ones, we got 3.5s, we got twos. It's crazy.
What categories got the lowest scores tonight?
The lowest scores that we got, see, now you're gonna make me want to pull up the graphics too, because I had those ready. But the lowest scores we got cinematography overall didn't have high scores. It got a 1.75 when we averaged it all out of 5.
Hmm.
We also had low scores for the mythology, for the mask. Now, part of that too is because the mask isn't prominent throughout the whole film,
Right.
but it is what it is. It's part of his
Right.
identity. Just like when we did the Elm Street debates, we're talking about, how does the makeup look? Does it
Mhm.
look like it's good stuff, or are we talking about the Rubbermaid Freddy look, and Freddy's dead?
Mhm.
Um, but it got high scores for the atmosphere. That was a 3.62. It had high scores for the kills, which obviously, that makes absolute sense. It had high scores for the characters, which
Yes.
that makes sense. The it factor was kind of in the middle. Well, it was
I can understand that. I
2.25.
can understand that. It's one that even me, like who is a big defender of this, and like Barb said, she had to kind of pump herself up. You got to
Yeah,
be in the right mind frame
You
you
to watch
do.
do.
this film. You got to be in the right mind frame to watch it and pay it, because we're all three content creators. You look at films differently when you're making a video on it than when you're
Yeah,
just watching it. We're
yeah,
pinpointing stuff. Barb has a whole book full of notes in front of her on this thing. You're
yep.
looking at things differently. You know what I mean?
That's right.
One thing about the mask, I love it, and I understand when it comes to Halloween fans, the mask is make or break, and I completely understand that. The Mask in 4, 4 is my favorite movie, but he looks like a
Yeah.
mime in 4. He looks
And
awful.
So
I
yep.
sad
like
about that.
I like this one because again, am I Nicolas Cage?
Hey, I like the Nick Cage mask. It's so punk rock.
It's
punk rock.
She loves it.
Bro, all right, we're going to have to change this conversation to something else. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
Oh, I want to be on some panels because, oh my God, I have a lot to say about some of these.
I got a lot to say about this too.
Well, Michael's been through some tough times. Stress causes the receding hairline, and this is what it is.
And the wrinkly looking neck. And what are we doing? Yeah. What are we doing?
You know what? This is what I love though, because you get so many interesting conversations out of these movies. You really do.
I mean,
what I love about the mask in H2 is a lot of people really hate that half of it's ripped off. I love that because now they're one. That's why I like it.
I'm sorry, I just read what Val wrote. I got distracted.
Oh no, Val's ready. Val's ready to light up on somebody.
No,
she says,
and that's what you wanted her to do.
Yeah, I know. It's just funny. Yeah. Okay, Barb.
I'm so happy. The
I
general.
will watch. Wow. See? Val, you're gonna have to let me know what you think as well, because that's crazy. Every time we talk about this movie, like Val is always just like, blah blah blah, because she's a huge Michael fan, anyways. But I will say this too. I think, and I've said this to Coriander many times too, and it's the same thing with Elm Street. When we did the great debates, or even when we did the live stream discussions, and we'd get to the end, that last movie or the ranking, which would usually be the final episode, I realized that for these legacy franchises, especially the big four, it's a roller coaster in some ways with some of these things, but I enjoy it anyways. And the reason why is because the franchise itself, like I can look at the franchise as a whole, and I can look at the parts of it. You know what I'm saying? And for every moment with Busta Rhymes, we have great moments with Loomis. For every time I see Freddie making some Looney Tunes joke, I'm watching Robert be masterful in Dream Warriors or Dream Master. For every time that Chad got stabbed and should have died, I'm seeing some amazing kill scenes in the first Scream or whatever. So all of these things, to me, the way I look at it as a fan, if you're a fan of a franchise, you got to also look at the bad stuff too. I'm not saying you got to like it. You can say that it's bad, but if you're a fan of a franchise, if you're a fan of a character, you can't just disown. You gotta accept it for what it is, man. Just like if you're putting some toast, some bread in the toaster, it's not always going to be perfect, but it is what it is. So,
and what I like is, if you don't like a film, God bless you. But why?
Yeah.
Why don't you like it? And don't just come out and say, "Oh, just because it sucks."
Right.
Why?
Right.
Convince me what is bad about it. And that's why I like doing these type of things on my channel with Barb, with you. It's the conversation. Me and Barb, we knew we were coming in, and you were not a huge fan of this one, or like people in the chat, like Val. But if we can just convince you, son of a bitch, if we can just convince somebody, but this type of movie also brings moments like that where you can bust my balls, you know what I mean, and have fun doing it. It is what it is. It's stuff like that. But that's what I like about this community for the most part, is we can have these civil conversations and possibly find good in a bad movie or a majority hated movie, however you want to word that, where the majority seems to hate it. But there's a lot more to this. Like, one things that we haven't really, that I look at, this is also a movie about failed fathers. There's two father figures who fail at being able to keep their kids, Michael metaphorically, safe.
Yes.
Loomis failed Michael and became a bastard of a human being. He really did. I'm okay with that because, again, it's the realism. He wanted to bank on it. Like, one of the most powerful scenes to me is when he didn't remember who Linda was at the book signing, and you had Linda's father pull the gun.
Right.
It shows how much he just doesn't care anymore.
That's such a good point, Eric. Such a good point.
It is.
The thing with Brackett is he's a failed father to two daughters now. He's a surrogate father to Laurie, and he's the biological father to Annie, and he's failed Annie more.
Yeah.
Not his fault, because he's now put Laurie in front. And again, I hate to make it sound mean, but he's put a non-biological daughter in front of his biological daughter.
Yeah.
They've both been through the same trauma. No matter what how people want to interpret it, like Annie says, she lifts up her hair. I've dealt with this too. You know what I mean? I'm tired of, you being the center of attention. I nearly died myself.
I'm surprised they didn't kick her little ass out. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And they're ruining their house, and he still let her live there. That's kind of awesome.
It's because of just how he felt. She's
Yeah,
got
the
no
guilt.
family. She's got no family. He
I think
knew
there was
who
guilt
she
too.
was. Yeah, he knew who she was when she was a baby. You know what I mean? So he has that guilt, and he just fails, and he knows it. He's trying to keep them together with the goofy stuff about Cat Ballou and Danielle Harris. I hate your pizza crust and this type of thing.
Yeah.
But when we get to that raw emotion, again, it's just so powerful for me. And this came out in 2009. I became a dad in 2012. I look at that stuff a lot different. We're going to talk about Pet Sematary tomorrow. I look at those films differently as a father. And this really hit me. Like, Rachel was on the couch, watching bits and pieces. This one isn't one of her favorites, but she likes it as well. She does enjoy Rob's film, but it was the scene where Brackett finds her.
Right.
And first off, it's an intense scene because, again, she's attacked and there's no noise. There's nothing until we cut later on. We hear the dressers being thrown over and the screams and stuff like that. It makes it more powerful and more visceral because, again, like I said, it's reading a book. You're putting the pictures in your mind yourself, and that's scary to me. And it's that scene where Brackett, he's with his deputy, and they're on the balcony. Phone calls from your house. Boom.
Yeah.
And if it was done by an actor other than Brad Dourif, I don't think it would have worked. Brad knows how to balance. You know what I mean? A lot of people know him as Chucky. Chucky is goofy as shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's, in my opinion, I love the Chucky franchise. I know man's in the chat. I'm not trashing Chucky, okay? But there's a big difference between the happy-go-lucky feel that franchise became, and I think that overshadows what Brad can do.
Oh, yeah,
The
absolutely.
Exorcist 3. In The Exorcist 3, 5 minutes in that whole movie, he kills it.
Yeah, he was
amazing. He runs
amazing.
up the stairs. He's not sobbing, but he looks dead in his deputy's face, and the way he uses his hands. Where is she? He pulls them down. He walks in there, and he has that sob. There's no wailing, no nothing, but we do hear a little bit that sob, and then no dialogue. We have a great score that almost brought me to tears last night. I'm not going to lie. And I think it's, again, being a dad watching it.
Yeah.
And it's because, I'll literally quote what I told Rachel last night. I said, Rob Zombie is a very, very smart man when it comes to his ideas. But he said, dick right now, because he is taking old actual home video footage of Danielle Harris. 8 years old with a puppy dog. And we focus a little bit on her corpse, but we know what Brad's seen, what Brackett's seen, and it's his little baby girl.
But also, we get that vibe of her as Jamie Lloyd, So as a Halloween fan, especially because 4 was such an integral movie, it literally saved the franchise. If 4 didn't work, we wouldn't have gotten to Rob Zombie's films, and I think that was smart of him too.
And it's smart because while he's looking at his little girl, his other little girl, it's edited in perfectly. Is out in the woods all alone. So he's failed 2 daughters.
Yeah.
And then when he pulls that gun on Loomis at the very end, regardless whether you're happy for Loomis's change or not, I know that's 50-50 with people. I'm okay with it. When he pulls that gun on him and you see the rage in him, he's almost tearing up. I don't know if he does or not. But just the way Brad is such a professional and he handles it. He knows how to handle mood. He knows how to handle his voice octave because, he's a voice actor too. Yep. All that stuff. I put myself in his shoes. I would pull a gun on Loomis if I just lost my daughter. You know what I mean? And this is the guy, whether you believe it or not, this is the guy. This is the reason why she's no longer there.
Yeah.
It's your fault. And it's just like, that's the stuff I think people overlook because of whether, I'm not picking on Night, but because of a white horse that's in there for 47 seconds. I timed it.
Yeah.
One word that he says, which I think makes sense because he's quiet for however many years. The one word he says is die, and it's to his failed father.
Yeah.
I think that has impact. That's how I look at it. But it's just the way Brad is. You put yourself in that position and you believe it. And I think people overlook it because of the changes Rob has done.
Yeah.
The Return to Oz stuff, we already know that didn't work. You know what I mean? People have rolled their eyes at that. They don't like the change in the Laurie character. You know what I mean? Because of what they're used to with Jamie Lee beforehand, or even Scout beforehand. They don't like the change. And a lot of people, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, they tune out way too early to look at these little things that are put in. So like, if you are a content creator, when you can peel apart, like Barbara said, the onions, when you can peel apart the onion and see these little things, you realize, okay. And I was just joking about the white horse. I said, but it literally is 47 seconds. And I get it. A lot of people don't like it, but there's okay. She's in the movie a little bit longer, but you know the point. You know the point.
I know what you mean.
Is a lot of people just they're like,
they hold on to the smallest parts.
I can't get past to something that's not even in the movie for a full minute.
Yeah.
You see the white horse for the first time, maybe 20 minutes in after the ambulance crash and he kills Richard Brake. You don't see it for another hour and a half. You know what I mean?
I have a question.
The movie's 2 hours long and you have 47 seconds of a white horse, but people just for some reason they grasp on it and they're like, I hate the movie because of the white horse. Well, there's more to it that you're missing because you're focusing on that one simple idea that didn't work for you.
Yeah,
that crash, did that really happen? I have a question on that. Do you guys think that really happened? Because as it progressed, it was like she had the dream, but that part happened, and then the body went missing.
I think the crash did happen because there's multiple mentions of how they never found the body. Obviously, if you think about it, the police are gonna show up. Michael was shot in the head. I always looked at the bullet grazed him. You know what I mean? The bullet probably grazed him. She's freaking out. She's 15, 16. She's probably never held a gun before.
Right.
There's some suspend of disbelief that you can give that film. I do believe Michael was picked up. I do believe the crash happened. He killed he killed Richard Brake and the other guy did die in the crash. And then he just disappeared until it was time when Deborah said, let's close the book.
Right. And can I just say, and Night, I think you're going to agree with me on this. Hearing him talk about it, if I hadn't already seen it, I would want to watch the movie.
Yeah.
Hearing Eric, the way he talks about, the way he discusses movies, you make me want to watch movies.
Yeah. I mean, it's when you have, again, when you go into aspects of the movie where you see the strengths of it and what have you, and you talk about why they are strengths, not just saying, I like it, or it's good, you know what I'm saying? Or just like the opposite way, saying I hate it or it sucks. Like when you go into reasons, to me anyways, that always is going to spark that, at least for me, that curiosity is like, okay, well, all right, well, that's why, blah, 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 blah. Now I'm curious if I'm going to have that same reaction, or I'm curious to just see it myself from my own eyes. You know what I mean? And I think that to me anyways, when people talk about movies, I think people that do a great job, I mean, you guys do that yourselves when you guys talk about movies, those are the conversations or the discussions that always interest me the most, because it goes beyond just one thing. It, like you said, Eric, it goes beyond just the white horse, or like you, Barb, when you're talking about behind the scenes of what he was trying to do with the whole idea of being a serial killer, making Michael a serial killer. That's interesting. Now we could talk about whether or not it worked perfectly or not. That's a whole nother discussion, but it's interesting, because it's something that it's beyond just saying that it was cool, or I liked it, or I hated it. You know what I mean? Right. So,
well, that's why, like I said, I like coming on this channel and Barb's and a few others because it's civil discussion. It's water cooler talk.
I really haven't seen anything negative. Nothing real negative in the chat at all.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about that too is that And by the way, and I'm going to get to the chat in a second too, because we haven't done that in a long time. So I apologize, brother. We've been having a great conversation.
I apologize too. I was so excited.
But no, that's okay. No, because that's what we want. But for May and Julie and Val and all you guys that are in the chat, moderators, always making sure that we keep the place positive and is open-minded. Because again, this movie is polarizing, but like I said to you guys, and I think I said it to you, Barb, especially, is like that's what makes it interesting to talk about, because it has a lot of meat on the bone. And to me, those discussions can be the most fun. If you think about it, and Eric, you know this as well as anyone, I've talked about this movie a lot on this channel, so for a movie that's like, you know what I mean? But there's a reason for that. That's because there's a lot to say about it, whether you're for it or against it. And for me, there's a lot to say that's in the middle as well, because of the behind the scenes, or what Rob wanted to do, or what he was forced to do or wasn't able to do. And we're not, and granted, we're going to be getting ready to end up here, but we didn't even get into, some of the other little things here and there. I wanted to get a little bit more into Annie and stuff like that. Maybe we'll have to do a second discussion, because we didn't get into like some of the other stuff that I was thinking that we would, which is fine, because rabbit trailing is always fun as well. But one thing's for sure, there's a lot to say about this film, and that's why I enjoy talking about it. And that's why, like I said, it's been talked about a lot, not just here, but obviously on many other channels. It's because there's a lot there, and you got to give Rob a lot of credit for that. You really, really do.
I appreciate you having us on for this tonight. Really, truly. Yeah, this was great.
Yeah.
And Val, I flipped Val. I think I flipped Val. She's gonna try it.
Hey, she did now. In Val's defense, she did not say she would finish the movie, but you know what? It's baby steps, Barb. She's going to put that. She's going to watch it, and you know what? Like I said before, Jason Goes to Hell on my shirt. I wore it for a reason, because we're defending a movie that we like against a majority of people who don't care for it. Knight himself has said it's not one of his favorites. It's always usually at the bottom of his rankings, and I respect that, but he's also looked at it differently. Now, if I can get someone to look at a film differently, and whether I'm successful or not, hey, you know what? Like, again, we've said art's subjective. You like what you like. You don't like what you don't like. But if I can actually get someone to make that step to, okay, I'll give it a second go, or a third, or 15th, whatever it takes. You know what I mean? And they look at it differently because they remember what we've said.
Yes.
Like I said, look at it as a movie about two failed fathers. You know what I mean? He hit a home run with that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't just focus on what the majority says, because again, it's always, he says a word, the white horse. Again, a lot of it's gratuitous nudity and stuff that Rob's known for. If you can get past that stuff, it's a 2-hour movie. There's a lot of good in that you can find if you just sit down and honestly just get rid of the horse, get rid of all the other stuff that everybody seems to focus on, and realize, wow, like Knight says, might not be a good Halloween film, but it's a good horror movie. He says that about Jason Goes to Hell. He doesn't like it as a Friday the 13th film, and I 100% understand what he means. It's not really a Friday the 13th movie. Body hopping and all that shit.
It can stand alone well on its own.
As a horror film,
on its own.
Knight says, I like it. So
it's got great stuff in it. Great kills, great practical stuff that they do. Some of the characters are fun and they pop. You know what I mean? The music, I enjoy, the change they did with the music. And it's got, for all the joking I do about, I won't say steal, but sharing, some of the vibes from The Hidden, which is a great sci-fi movie from, I believe it's 88. By the way, if you guys haven't seen that, check that out.
It's awesome.
It is awesome. But as much as that aspect of it kind of rubs me the wrong way, it's a fun aspect. That's why I love The Hidden, because it's like you don't know who the killer is until you know, and what are they going to do? So that's a great example as well. It really is. Real quick too, I want to make sure we did have another super chat come in from Senaroth. Thank you. Welcome to the chat. Hopefully I pronounced it right. If not, let me know. Saying, was Laurie the killer? I disagree. Was Laurie
Oh,
the
it's hard to know
killer?
the context of that now.
Yeah, that
Maybe
is.
when you brought up when because in the theatrical version she puts on the mask and she
Oh,
comes
yeah,
and
sis,
strolls
yeah.
out. She kills
Yeah.
Michael in that version, but she
Yes.
doesn't kill anybody in the director's cut. And that's the only one I watched. I haven't seen the theatrical cut since theaters because I thought when I bought it, I have the unrated, and I personally think that's the way to go. It cuts out a lot of the psychedelic stuff. There's more
That's true.
dream sequences in the theatrical. He pulls away from that.
Yeah.
And he focuses more on the character, the humanity of these characters, not just Michael, but these characters in general. And again, that ending, to
Eric,
me, it works.
I'm so sorry. Do you think that that's why some people maybe have disliked it after even one watch because maybe they saw the theatrical?
And they didn't want to return to it. It's possible.
There's so
It's possible.
I'm telling you
And it also
that
depends.
unrated is so different.
It also depends on how you saw it. When I first saw Halloween 2 in theaters, I hated it. But I had a bad experience. I had people behind me yelling and screaming, saying this is freaking stupid, this and that. And I'm like, I couldn't focus. I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to have a good time.
Yeah.
You know me, I'm a physical media completionist. I own Halloween 5, and I don't like that movie, but I got it because I'm a completionist. I did not like Halloween 2, seen it in theaters. I bought the DVD. It's director's cut, and I'm like, wow, this is fucking good. This is really good. There's still some misses. There's still a lot of stumbles, but it's a vast improvement. And also, again, how did you watch that film the first time you watched it? Were you having a bad day? I'm like, I'm not in the mood for all this moody shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
And again, with horror movies, sometimes I want a goofy movie. As much as we bust on Resurrection, it has its purpose. Sometimes you just want to watch a goofy slasher movie.
Yep.
Resurrection, Freddy's Dead, they have their purposes. You know, the 80s is full of goofy horror movies that are not like the core four, like you talk about, the Trinity and all that. You open up Tubi and you go just into 1980s horror. I hate to say it, there's a lot more garbage than good. You know, if you look at it as a filmmaking thing,
oh, absolutely,
you can love a bad movie. Sometimes you're in. Bro, I love Pumpkinhead too. That movie is trash.
Oh yeah.
But sometimes I want to sit down. I maybe had a rough day at work, because I work in a factory. It's been 90 plus degrees of the humidity. I want to relax with a beer, maybe some pizza, and I want to watch something that can make me chill. I can laugh and have fun. That's one of my go-tos. I know it's a bad movie, but it serves a purpose, just like Freddy's Dead and Resurrection. So it all depends on your mood. Sometimes, there could be a time when we're doing Battle World and I don't want to watch Resurrection, but we're doing it, and it all depends on how you view it at that point in your life.
Well, I think I had mentioned to you, Eric, maybe I mentioned to you as well, but Halloween 2018, I hated it at the theater, and I felt bad that I hated it because I went to see it with a friend and she loved it. And I was trying to okay, Barb, tone it down on the hate, because I was like, this is silly. And you can almost see the spots where Danny McBride, you could just see the spots where he had input. And I'm just like, dude, why did you do that? But the second watch, when I saw it at home, it was better. I just needed to marinate it for a while in my brain.
We've done 2 episodes of Battle World, I think, with 2018.
Yep.
And when I first watched it, I did go to see it in theaters because I didn't care. It was one of those, we've seen it before. Jamie Lee came back 20 years before.
Yeah.
So I didn't go and see it in theaters. First time I watched it, again, completionist. I bought the DVD. I was yelling at my TV, screaming, and I didn't want to enjoy it. When I watched it for Battle World, we have to do it by categories. We have to sit down, watch it, and pick it apart.
Right.
I'm still not a fan of 2018 for many reasons, but I've even said Night and Coriander and Killian, they've brought me a little closer to it. I can enjoy certain aspects of it that David Gordon Green has done, at least behind the camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is more good to it with repeated viewings. Maybe I'll enjoy it by the 5th time we talk about it on Battle World, if that happens. But sometimes that takes it. Like, you got to break it down.
You do.
Again, I every time Barb wanted to get me to talk Halloween 5 on our channel, I loathe it. I don't hate that movie. I loathe it. and it's in capital letters. Watch her video, and I found some good in it. And I,
Oh
and
my
everybody
God,
was
if
saying I
you-
looked at it
there is
differently.
good in it. I mean,
If you
when
guys
we-
have not seen that video, Eric is hilarious in that video that we did. You were so funny. Like, he doesn't like the movie, but he was cracking me up. Knight, did you watch
Yeah.
that one?
I saw some of it. I did, because I knew
He's so
he wasn't a
funny.
fan of 5 because we talked about 5,
Mhm.
but there is good in it. There
is.
is. And
It's-
I'm not the biggest fan of it either.
Right.
I mean, well, okay, look, I'm a fan of it, but not
Mhm.
a big fan of it. You know,
Correct.
I'm more of a fan of it because of it continuing the story from 4,
Okay.
which I
Right.
was a big fan of, but they
Mhm.
totally pivoted so much.
Mhm.
So, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
I could go down
I
that
think
road
Battle World
forever.
is so fair, though. The way you have set that up, I think it's
That's
so
why I like it.
fair. It's not like you guys are trying to play favorites. You actually do
Right.
think about it like, okay, well, yeah, it's according to music. How are we going to give this points? And it could be
Right.
your favorite one, but if it had
Yeah.
crappy music, you're not going to give it the points.
Yeah.
There-
I
there-
mean, it's true. That's what makes it
there's a
fun.
Battle World where we had Jason Goes to Hell, and it was the negative point category, and I didn't want
That's
to do
right.
it, but Jason Goes to Hell got my negative point.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's
I
what I like.
mean,
You know what? There
Yeah.
are a lot of faults in that movie too.
yeah.
But that doesn't
I
mean you
mean,
can't enjoy something.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, with all the different aspects of a film, you just look at each part and you just, you know, obviously we put our
Mhm.
vote to it, but that also makes you look at the film again in a bigger picture type of way,
Yep.
which I think is really fantastic. And which is why I enjoy us doing those, and we always try to make it fair. Like, we wouldn't do like Elm Street versus Madman. You know what I'm saying? That's
No.
not going to be a
Yeah.
fair debate or battle. You know what I'm
We're
saying?
not going to have Alien versus Leprechaun or something
Exactly. You know what I mean?
Right.
You want the 2 films, or sometimes 3 films, that we're talking about to be kind of in that same vicinity of craft. You know what I'm
Correct.
saying? And then that way there's a true battle. You know, like when
Mhm.
we just did Elm Street and 78 and Friday 4. I mean,
Mhm.
I love all 3 of those films, but
Mhm.
in the battle world, there's certain ones I picked over others based upon category, you know, and
Would you
not
ever expect the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, which is known for its kills, to get
Yep.
4 for 4 worst kills?
right, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So that's what makes that fun. But yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, that's why I like doing battle world. I really do.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, look. One more thing. Let me also say we got Corey in the chat too, who came in saying it's a cool vibe, good conversation that y'all got here. Thank you so much, man. Saying subscribing. Definitely
awesome.
make sure that you
Awesome.
guys are subscribed or subscribe to Eric and Barb's channel. We got the links in the chat, and we got the links in the description as well. And definitely, when you talk about movies and discussion, you know, I think that you know, all of us and so many others in the community, and obviously other content creators too, I think that's the biggest thing, is that we just love talking about movies
Mhm.
and talking about our thoughts on them and our passion and our stories and our nostalgia and so forth. So if you guys love that type of thing, then you're in the right community. All of us here and so many other content creators, some of which that have been in the live chat. I wasn't able to say hi to everyone. I know my man Marcus was in there. Good to see you, buddy. And so many others, JT, all of you guys. We didn't want to make you guys think we didn't see you, but we were just rocking and rolling on this conversation. So with that being said, leave some comments, talk about some of these things. You guys were rocking and rolling with each other. Great conversation, great
Mhm.
points made that we weren't able to always you know, highlight or answer. Talk about it in the comments. You know, all of us on social media, you know, these are the type of things that drive us. I know it drives me, and I know it drives you guys as well. So make sure you guys do that. If you haven't hit the like button, make sure you do that. I haven't even said that once. What is going on? This is crazy. You guys know the
He's off in
routine.
Oz. That's what it
I
is.
feel like it's
I'm
my
telling you.
fault because I was so excited. I was like,
No. We
No,
were all having some
Knight
fun,
knew
man.
that this was your show, so he
oh,
wanted to.
just
Yeah.
this was so much fun.
Yeah.
And if you
Absolutely.
Knight, if you decide to do another one where we're talking more about Annie Brackett, please, I would love to. Eric
Yeah.
too. Oh my gosh, we've talked about that as being kind of like the highlight.
Yeah. No,
with Annie and her dad. So
I absolutely loved, and I won't go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, they were huge, um, big points for this film for me because I really felt like it was almost like Annie was kind of taking a little bit of that light that you would usually see in the lead character. Obviously, that
yes,
being Laurie, but Laurie was dealing with her
Yeah.
trauma and the events of the first film. So
And
yeah, they were
we did
great
bring
characters.
out, just compare the two types of the characters from the first film and the second one. She's so abrasive, she's so loud, and
She is.
I honestly found her kind of obnoxious in the first film, and it's a complete 180. She's so
they
likable
both
and
did,
lovable.
didn't they?
Yeah, yeah.
They
Yep.
both had a.
So,
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. So it's crazy, but yeah, maybe we'll get together and do a part 2 of this and stuff.
Okay.
You guys here, leave us some comments. Let us know if that's something that you'd want us to do and so forth. And we'll talk about that in the comment section as we always do. I'll be putting up whether it's post or whatever on the community tab, but also in the Patreon, so we can talk there as well for any of you guys that are part of that, because I know people were earlier and even days before. Once I put the stream up, I started hearing people say, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? What? And I would just say, hey, my two friends, they want to open up this can of worms and we're gonna do it live. And so
and
that was the whole
Val is
thing.
diving headfirst into that can, whether she
She
likes it or
is.
not. She, what?
She is.
You got that one little victory. So
She-
good for you, Barb. You
But look
did
at-
what you wanted to do.
Right?
Look at the poll, though. The
Oh
poll.
yes, that's right. I forgot all about the poll,
That's so
man.
awesome.
So we had the poll up.
Oh, wow.
Actually, the whole time we got 55%
Yeah.
are fans. Look at that.
Okay, you got two
Who would have
victories,
thought?
Barb. Good for you.
I'm so
44
happy.
votes.
And then it's I gotta say it's all Barb, because whenever we do polls on Battle World and shit, what do we get? 30 people in the chat.
That's
We get
right.
10 votes.
That's
That
right.
is so cool.
That's
I feel like a kid on Christmas morning.
There you go. See?
I'm just a happy little weirdo tonight.
I don't even know what to say. That's great. But I'm glad that you guys had fun, though. Seriously, this was a lot of fun. It's always fun. Look, man. Well, and Eric knows this because every time, whenever we do Battle World and we're talking Halloween, I know Eric will get that moment. He's like, "Oh, here we go." Michael again. Look, man. You guys know.
You saw how happy I was that Jason won last Sunday and it wasn't Michael.
Yeah. I was too. Look, you guys. Look, you guys know the rules. I'm Friday 13th is my favorite, but Michael. I have a special place for Michael in his own way, and obviously with Freddie and Ghostface. But it's always fun. It's always fun talking about these things because they're a big part of my not even just horror journey, but movie journey. These are films that I've been connected to since I was a little boy. So it's always fun to talk about them. And that's why I do it so much. It's crazy how much content I have for Halloween.
It's kind of like it's an ongoing thing now. I don't hate talking Halloween, but it's kind of fun just poking the bear. Oh, great. Michael won again. All right, see you next week.
I remember when he was the champion, and every time I'd say to Kill, "Who's the champ?" And he's like, "Michael Myers," and Eric would be like, here we go. It's like, hey, sometimes
it just makes it more fun.
Sometimes
Wait,
the
does
boogeyman
Killian
wins.
prefer Jason over Michael or Michael over Jason? I don't remember.
We're all Jason people.
We're all Jason.
We're all Jason people.
New Jersey.
Yeah, we're all New Jersey, but again, it's all in fun too. I mean, he's a big Halloween fan as well, and obviously Elm Street, and same thing with Coriander and Scream. I mean, I truly think that these are franchises that have reached so far through the decades and have done so much for the genre, and especially for the slasher subgenre. They're just always going to be important to us. I know it is going to be for me, speaking for me alone, and that's why we have so much content of those 4 franchises on this channel. So,
I don't mind it. There can never be too much.
yeah. Well, thank you for that. That's great to hear. All right, so look, guys, thank you guys so much. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. This has been a blast. Make sure you guys get into the comment section, go to Eric's channel, go to Barb's channel. We got the links. One more time, Val was putting them in the chat. We still have them in the description. So make sure you guys do that. And, if you're following me on social media, you'll also see Eric and Barb, whether it's on Instagram, Patreon, the Facebook page. We're all over the place, and these guys are awesome friends, and they're part of the community as well.
I want to say one thing. You know, Barb's new to the YouTube world as like a content creator. I'm putting the pressure on the horror community right now. Okay, get her to 100 by the end of July. You guys got like 3 weeks.
I think I'm at 94.
We can do it.
6. Come on. We've got 27 in the chat. 6 of you.
We can do it.
That's it.
Oh, thank you.
You
guys
got
are awesome.
2.5 weeks. 2.5 weeks.
I have this.
We can do it. That won't be any issue.
Funny thing that I do, and I'll let you go to bed because you're probably tired. But every time something, I think I mentioned to Eric, every time something gets to the 100 views, like if one of my videos gets to 100, I say to Eric, "Oh, it reached the 100 club."
Yeah.
It's just fun. It's just fun for me. And there's two there's two in particular that have really surpassed that. They're like 300 and 400 views. It's really weird. The ones that I didn't expect that.
Right.
But there was a while where there were two that were at a certain number, and I was just watching them almost like they were like the rabbit and the hare. Like, or am I saying that wrong? Rabbit and the
rabbit is a hare.
The rabbit is a hare.
The hare and the tortoise.
The hare and the tortoise. Maybe I'm a little tired, but yeah, the hare and the tortoise. It's like watching
rabbit,
them,
tortoise, white horse. We're all there.
Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, it's all about the white
right there.
horse.
Look, Kelly just subscribed to you, so now you only got 5 more
95.
to go.
Thank you.
Very cool.
All right, I'll let you go to bed, you guys.
Well, look. Let me say goodbye to these guys. Then I'll say goodbye to you two backstage. So for all of you guys here, thank you so much. And again, we enjoy hanging out with you guys. Glad that you hung out with us. It's been a fantastic Saturday night. And we will catch you guys next time. And as always, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Night Watch. Peace.
Cheers.